All righty. Here we go. What you have in front of you is the handout for the note packet for this unit that we're doing on the Cold War, part 2 of 3. You guys ready with your notes? All right, let's do this. You can call it Cold War, part 2 of 3, which doesn't really mean anything to anybody else except for you. Okay, probably the most helpful thing that you could have in there is this is going to be looking generally at the years between 1961 and 1976, a variety of different Cold War situations that occurs in that time frame. This is going to be very helpful information to prepare you for paper 2, the Cold War. But also paper 3, there's some Cold War topics there having to do with like Cold War in the Americas, so that's a paper 3, section 16 issue. And then we've got paper 2 topic on 20th century wars. In here, chronologically, we'll plug them in mostly toward the end. We've got the North Yemen Civil War, which I honestly didn't know that much about before I did my research in order to teach you about what took place there. Although it's very interesting because it's got very important ramifications and ties in to what's going on in that part of the world. Okay? As well as the Nigerian Civil War, which is very, very, very sad. Yeah, that's going to be a really strange one, yeah. Mm-hmm. The IB exam or my exam? Okay. Here's the thing. When you actually are taking the exam, we'll give you practice and going through and so forth. When you get to the paper 2 topic, okay, for this year, you guys know that you only have to do one essay. Okay? In the past, it was 2 essays. For each of those topic areas, 20th century wars, Cold War, there's other topic areas like authoritarian states, democratic states, and so forth. We're not worrying about the authoritarian states. Although, who knows? For each of those topic areas, you get 2 questions to choose from. Hopefully you like one of them, okay? In fact, so for you guys are going to probably be seriously looking at 4 questions. And you pick one of them. 2 of them are going to be in the 20th century wars one. 2 of them are going to be in the Cold War one. I like to get students ready for lots of different things because sometimes the way that they phrase the question, it's like, really? Seriously? Thanks so much. Like, for example, there was a question. I won't say great question. It was a great headache. It was one of the Cold War questions, and it asked to compare 2 countries' involvement in some aspect of the Cold War. And you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. 2 countries. Let me see. I'll do Soviet Union and the United States because those are the 2 biggest countries involved in the Cold War. The question itself said, but you may not write about the Soviet Union or the United States. Oh my gosh, yeah, maniacal laugh. No kidding. I mean, it was like, seriously. What has been my response to help students to deal with situations where they don't like the questions? I mean, sometimes it's the question itself that just sort of like, it's a little bit too narrow. Don't choose it. So my solution for you is to give you more material. That's why we did the whole authoritarian states unit. So that you could look at those 2 questions and go, okay, I like one of those ones here, and I like one of those there. You only have to have 2 questions in the past that you feel good about and you write about. And so that's the solution, and it works really well, okay? So when you're getting ready for it, it's kind of like, what do I study? You study everything that we've covered. And then when do you really know what you're going to be writing about? When you look at the questions. And sometimes you might feel like, I just know more about this, I'm going to do this question. And sometimes you just like the way that the question's written. Okay? When you get to paper 3, normally you would write like 3 essays. This time you're going to be writing 2. There's going to be a whole bunch of different questions you'll be able to look at and decide which 2 you like. Although I will remind you, come April, you can't pick 2 questions from the same like little category thing. Oh, really? Thank you very much. It didn't matter in the past, because you were writing 3 essays and you could pick 2 from one and then 1 from something else. Yeah. Did you have a question on your hand up? No. Okay. Did that help a little bit, Jack? I know you're looking into the future, which is good, which is wise. And I'm looking into the future for you guys as well to help get you guys ready. Usually, like, paper 1 is an hour long. That actually goes by fairly quickly. You should be fine on that one. They must change the time frame, though, because usually paper 2 then is an hour and a half. But if you're only going to be writing one essay, I'm guessing they'll probably give you like 50 minutes maybe. And then paper 3 was 2.5 hours to write 3 essays. But if you're only writing 2, did you really? Okay, 45 minutes for paper 2. That's not bad. So yeah, that's not bad. The history one is spread out. So usually what they do, like say in the morning, they do paper 1, paper 2. And then in the afternoon, they'll do paper 3. Or typically what happens is they'll like have paper 1, paper 2 on one day, and then paper 3 like the next day. But I mean, they're mixing in. Jack's obviously got the schedule. Have you got the schedule yet? Okay, all right. They may have, they probably do have the schedule for all the different ones and so forth. And they're kind of intertwined. English used to go first all the time, or like among the earliest ones. Now they tend to be one of the later ones. I think last year or the year before, like history was one of the early ones. Well, it wasn't at all last year, but it was scheduled to be among the early ones. Yeah. It's a busy 2 or 3 weeks. It depends. When we calibrate you even more as we get ready for that, you'll want to, we did this a bit last year too, you'll want to be writing an essay that takes you about 40 to 45 minutes, right? You don't want to like be not finished after 45 minutes, because then you're calibrated maybe to like Mrs. Rao's essay. For English, I think those ones are like 2 hour long, or I don't know, maybe 90 minutes. Anyway, longer. I will calibrate you to write like 45 to 50-minute essays. So you haven't written enough if you wrap it up like within 15 minutes. You probably didn't say enough to get into that essay to make it a good quality essay. I don't know, I guess, I don't know. It's like the words, I don't know how many words it is and so forth. Usually depending on like, I don't know, we'll see. I mean, April, calibration time. We are going to calibrate you. You're like, what do you mean calibrate? You're going to be doing lots of practice essays and so forth. We'll have already covered all the content that we need. We're going to get there. Okay? Other questions? You ready? Shh. It's okay. Do you trust me that I can do what I need to do to help you guys get to be where you are, to be successful on it? Yeah. No, I'm not going to let you fall apart. If you keep trying, we'll go there day by day. And then the next thing you look, you're going to be looking around going, oh, it's the green group. We're all at graduation together. Did you graduate from North Star too? Wow, you went every other day that I didn't go. Or, oh, it's the students at home. You know, I haven't seen you guys. You know, it is tough. And I don't know, like, student council doing things to try and, like, are you, because I saw you guys were talking down there. Are you talking about trying to do things? I know. It's like, let's have a dance, social distance. That's good. Do a Zoom prom. No. That actually keeps it kind of small. There is a justification for doing that. All right. Yeah. So are you guys ready? Okay. All right. Let me just remind you, let me give you the big picture. This unit. Here we go. Anna, you ready? Okay. We're ready to go. Okay. In this unit, we look at things that are going to be taking place within the context of 61 to 76. Now, within that context, you can write this down. I mean, write all this down because it's like sort of preliminary, and then we'll get into the guts of what we're going to be focused on today, which is, looking at the clock here because I don't want to go over with you guys. We got until 11 o'clock. Okay, good. This is like a really hot part of the Cold War. We almost go nuke. We'll cover the Cuban Missile Crisis. DEFCON like death. I forget what the thing was. It was like defense condition. I mean, there were people who were like expecting the world to go because the United States and the Soviet Union over Cuba and like the location of Soviet forward-based nuclear missiles, in Cuba, pointing at the United States. I mean, we're going, ah! This is during that time period. So there's going to be a lot of crazy things going on, ups and downs and so forth. The Cold War is so interesting. There's so many things going on. And the thing that's interesting about the Cold War is it's like touches like the whole planet. I mean, it's like we got this conflict between the United States and the Soviet Union, and our partners and allies are subject nations if you're talking about the Soviet Union, and we just bring everything into it. We just look at the whole war in the context of like Cold War glasses. We look at a part of the world and going, are you for us or against us? That's all you need to know. If you're with us, then we're with you, even though you don't have a democratically elected government. I mean, South Korea, for goodness sakes, during much of this time period, we covered that in the Korean War. Did they have a democratically elected government? No. So why did we like the government of South Korea? There were people in South Korea that wanted to be, and South Korea will ultimately develop into a democracy, which is awesome. But the reason why we're like, we got your back, South Korea, because you are anti-communist. Okay? I mean, and North Korea is it's an interesting thing. Even still today, North Korea, their best friend in the world is China. Yeah, and China sometimes looks and go, really? Really? You're gonna take us through this? I mean, I don't know if you guys got younger siblings or friends and so forth, and you're like, you're challenging my relationship with you. Your behavior is like, it's like, ugh. So you get some of those things. I mean, that's like the way it is in the world. I mean, like sometimes, like, we already saw this. The United States was looking at Britain and France, and Britain and France are like, we're going to maintain control over the Suez Canal. Do you remember we talked about that last semester? We're going to maintain control over the Suez Canal. We're not going to let the Egyptians have it. And the United States is like, seriously? You're messing things up. Like the conversation you might have someday with your parents when your parents make decisions and you're like, oh dear, I have surpassed my parents in my understanding of the world and my responsibility and so forth, and now I'm in the difficult position of trying to lecture them. How many of you guys have attempted to try and lecture your parents on something so far in life? How many of you guys have thought about things that perhaps your parents would be well advised to listen to your advice, but maybe it's just not the time yet? Okay? Well, the United States is the #1 player in that alliance, but it's a difficult, interesting relationship and so forth. It gets sticky. It gets very interesting. All right, let's lay out the players here. You ready? Okay. The players during this particular time period on the United States side, let's look at this. On the United States side, we're going to see a transition from President Eisenhower, okay, as the American president. He is going to fulfill his 2 terms and then hand over power next to who? John F. Kennedy. Very good. When does the transition take place? Well, hand over the position of the presidency. Yeah, I mean, thank you very much. Thank you for clarifying the Constitution. If Donald Trump loses, he doesn't hand over power. That time period that he is president expires. I mean, that's just how it works. That's how it works. Anybody know, when would that take place? When in 1961? Thank you very much for the vague answer, but what specifically? What month does the presidential inauguration take place? January, yes. Anybody know what day? Very good. It's in the Constitution. So Donald Trump on January 20th, 2021 will either be standing as an attending Joe Biden's inauguration, or he will be taking the inaugural oath again. Okay? So we got John F. Kennedy, and we're going to see he is elected to a term. Sadly, he will not fulfill that full term because he's going to be assassinated in 1963. His vice president, Lyndon Johnson, will take over, and then he will be subsequently elected in 1964. So this is a Kennedy-Johnson thing. And then we're going to get into Richard Nixon, who was a very, very important figure as well. He will be elected in 1968 and reelected in 1972, although he will not finish out his 2nd term. Does he get impeached? No. Nice try. Is he on? Mary, did he do anything that a lot of people felt he should be impeached and he was on the road to getting impeached? Yes. And he may have been removed as well from his position. That's how things looked. So, Mary, how did he leave office then? Exactly. Yeah, he resigned. And then Gerald Ford, very good. Gerald Ford, his vice president, ends up taking over the last part. We don't talk as much about Ford in this one, but that's the American side. And we'll talk about some key leaders among the allies as well. Yeah. Okay. You all right? Are you sure? Okay. Okay. All right. On the Soviet side, let's see if you guys identify this. Who is the top Soviet leader entering into this time period? He came into the position of General Secretary of the Communist Party in the Soviet Union after Stalin died. When it was like 1953, Stalin died, and this guy came into the top position. Who is it? Initials, NK. Good luck spelling it. In your notes, you can just put K. Sometimes I write KHR, and then good. You read it, Nikita Khrushchev. Okay, Nikita Khrushchev, right? So he's going to be a very important figure in that early stage as we transition into the 1960s. He actually, I can tell you this, and we'll get into the reasons why, he actually will be removed from his position of authority. He doesn't die and lose power like Stalin. He will be removed by other top people in the Politburo, the top communist committee in the Soviet Union. They're not going to kill him, but they're going to remove him. And the last one we'll look at, and you can see the bullet points. Some of you guys are like, oh, I found it already there on the front, on the first page. Then we'll get into Leonid Brezhnev. Leonid Brezhnev, okay? And, no, Russian names. You have difficulty with Russian names. Yes? See? Okay. And he will be in there, say, from the mid-1960s all the way until he's a very old man in our next unit. He is going to die in his position, I want to say like 1981, 82. And then we'll get into the last of the Soviet leaders, two of which you're not going to even spend much time with, Andropov and Chernenko. But any of you guys remember, what is the name of the last Soviet leader? Well, he'll be a critical part of our last unit on the Cold War. I'll give you a clue. It's like that guy right there. Yeah, he's got the birthmark. Gorbachev. Yeah, Gorby. Yeah, he's going to be a very different kind of, yeah, Gorbachev, yes. He's going to be a very different kind of Soviet leader. Okay? All right, so there is a little bit of the overlay. We've got some big things going on. We've got the Vietnam War going on. We've got the Cuban Missile Crisis going on. We've got Berlin is going to jump right back into the situation again. Berlin. Okay? Well, by way of background, let's talk about, sometimes it's worth looking at some of the background of the various different people who were in the position in the Cold War. Like, so for example, Eisenhower. When Eisenhower became president of the United States, Virginia, I'll take a volunteer. What kind of background in government or like military types of issues did Eisenhower have? Anybody? I can call on somebody then. Thank you. Was he a general? Was he just sort of an average, like low-ranking general, or was he like a high-ranking general? He was a very high-ranking general. What kind of like high-ranking responsibility did he have inside a major conflict like World War II? He was in charge of D-Day. He was in charge of the overall organized Allied attack on D-Day, right? British, French, British, Canadian, American forces. Eisenhower was a big deal in the American effort during World War II. Okay, so he came in with a lot of military background. And then he decided he was going to go into politics, and people were like, wow, I wonder how he's going to be as a politician. Well, he got elected resoundingly in 1952 and reelected in 1956. Why didn't he run in 60? No, nothing about how he felt. I mean, he might have chosen to do it, but he couldn't. He was the first president that the constitutional amendment had an impact on with respect to limiting them to basically 2 terms. Yeah. Which is why, from here on out, we got Eisenhower, 2-term. Nixon would have had 2 terms. Johnson could have run for a 2nd term. He chose not to. Let me see. Jimmy Carter tried to, didn't. Reagan got 2 terms. George H.W. Bush tried, only had 1. Bill Clinton, 2 terms. George W. Bush, 2 terms. Barack Obama, 2 terms. Donald Trump. To be continued. Yes, to be continued. 1 or 2. All right. I mean, he is the Republican nominee. So, I mean, there is an opportunity for 2 terms, but it could just be 1. We'll see how it works out, yeah. He's going to go on the wall. He's going to go next to Trump. He's going to mess it up! Oh my gosh, we need to re-elect Trump because otherwise it'll throw off the whole symmetry of Mr. Hansen's, like, president on the wall. I mean, to be honest, if it's Biden, I'm going to move Uncle Reed's poster over a little bit, and I'm going to just tuck him right in there. Do you know how long it takes to put that together? You can be like, it's off balance. Biden, he won't fit sideways. Oh my God, seriously. I thought I was OCD. You guys are worse. It just won't work. It won't work. Should I put him over Trump? You're like, yes. Some are like, no. You know what? Actually, some of you guys, when I first put this up, there was no Trump. There actually was like, I'm not going to pull it off there, but there was like a sort of like a blue dot thing because we didn't know who the president was going to be. So we had two pictures ready to go. Is it going to be, it's like a birth, gender revealing thing, Is it a boy or is it a girl? Is it Trump or is it Hillary? So anyway, we got Trump. So there's Trump. Okay? Good question. You're not the only one that's asked that question. It comes up all the time. I mean, look at this. All these flags, you know how long it took for me to figure out how to do some kind of a symmetrical thing of all these flags? And notice, one of those flags is not a flag of a country. I put the Olympics right in the middle to create that symmetry. I like symmetry. I do. So trust me, it actually does kind of throw me off because it is possible to redo the whole thing and cut all the tape, connecting all of the... Thank you for not burdening me with that thing. You're okay if I just sort of stick it over on there on the side? No! No! What? A cast project? You may not reorganize my entire room. Because I like it the way it is. It's cluttered the way I want it. What? Yeah, after I leave, we can designate you to be the ones to rearrange the room. Yes. Actually, all Mrs. Barzie's really cool quotes and things and so forth, they're still up there. This is like everything else on the wall. It's covered by posters. Yeah, she had really cool quotes. That is an alternative, yes. It still won't be symmetrical. Yeah. It'll be better than sticking out. All right, shall we continue? Right. Speaking of lots of people, Kennedy was born into a family with lots of people. Write it down. John F. Kennedy. Let's get some background on John F. Kennedy because who these people are is very important. Eisenhower came with a lot of background. And so, when Kennedy came in, he was one of the youngest presidents ever to become president of the United States, John F. Kennedy. And there were some people who are like, oh, he's too young. Whatever, Are we going to elect the youngest president of the United States in 2020? No, I think we're going to elect the oldest president. Either way, I think it's going to end up being the oldest president. I think Trump will either set the record if he stays in office or Biden will set the record. Whatever. So, he's in his 70s? Yeah. So anyway, here we go. Back it up. Blah, blah, blah. Shh. John F. Kennedy. All right? Actually, identify. Shh, guys. We're trying to do some education here in the time. Identify on here. We got all kinds of people. They're all Kennedys. We're actually going to be talking significantly about two of them, and we've already talked about two of them in government class with the civil rights movement and so forth and going on there. See if you can identify which one of them is John F. Kennedy. The one on the right? The bottom right? That's a girl. That's a sister. That's mom. This one? That's the dad. That's Joseph P. Kennedy. This one? Correct. John F. Kennedy is on the left in the middle. Okay? He is not the eldest son. Write this down. John F. Kennedy is not the eldest son of Joseph and not Ethel. Joseph. Rose Kennedy. Joseph and Rose Kennedy. Okay? Irish Catholic family. Okay? Lots of kids. Okay? No stereotypes. They just had lots of kids. Okay? Lots of girls, lots of boys. And Joseph Kennedy was successful financially and politically. Write it down. Joseph Kennedy. He had big ideas for his kids, particularly his sons. And, I'm sure he would have had big ideas and so forth, perhaps for his daughters if this was the family arrangement and so forth today. But back in those days, the most opportunities that existed, it seemed like, for people in politics and so forth were for sons. So Joseph Kennedy, let me tell you about him. Made a lot of money, got involved in politics and so forth, but didn't run as himself so much. He actually ended up being the United States ambassador for Roosevelt to Britain, which is interesting. To Britain. An Irish Catholic family, he's the U.S. ambassador to Great Britain. And you're like, did Britain and Ireland have really positive relations throughout the 1900s? No. I mean, in fact, Ireland had just gained its independence. So that's an interesting relationship. But Joe Kennedy had aspirations for his sons, and particularly his eldest son. His eldest son, John F. Kennedy, was born 1917, but his older brother, Joe, right up at the top, Joe Jr. Let me tell you about Joe. Joe Jr. was the one that they sort of pegged to be moving successfully, and Joe Kennedy wanted to work with his people and so forth and get him successful in politics and so forth. Because, they literally had a goal. They wanted, in their family, to have the first elected Catholic president in the United States of America. Never before had there been a Catholic president in the United States of America. The closest we ever came, I want to say, running against Harding, I think I'm right on that one. Al Smith, who was a Democratic politician from the state of New York, he was a Catholic. But if you look at the history of the United States, there had been, not so much today I would say, a lot of anti-Catholic resentment and animosity and prejudice against Irish Catholics or Italian Catholics. Those were the two biggest immigrant groups that ended up being on that prejudice, religious prejudice. So, a goal of the family was to, one of the boys, Joe, was the one who was pegged to be the first Catholic president. Was one of the Kennedys the first Catholic president of the United States of America? Yes, it was. Was it Joe? No, Joe, in World War II, he fought in World War II, you can write that down. Joe fought in World War II. Because if you fight in World War II, you're a veteran. There was kind of an expectation. It's been a while since we've had people go, yeah, we're going to vote for a veteran because they understand military affairs and so forth and so on. I don't know if it matters that much. Trump didn't serve. Barack Obama didn't serve. George W. Bush served in the Air Force Reserves and so forth, so he didn't fight over in Vietnam. Bill Clinton didn't serve. George H.W. Bush was the last one that actually served in a fight. He was one of the youngest Navy pilots in World War II. Remember I told you the story, he got shot down. And if it wasn't for a man who ultimately became a architect in Boise, Idaho, George H.W. Bush would have never survived. Didn't I tell you that story? I thought I did. Okay, George H.W. Bush was shot down by a Japanese Zero, right? Zeros. And he's in the water, and they're like, we're going to shoot this guy down. But then Nat Adams from Idaho chased off the Japanese pilot, and so George H.W. Bush was able to survive getting shot down into the ocean. And as he survived, then he had kids, and he had a career, and so forth. Right? Interesting. He became an architect and had a family, and I even taught one of his grandsons when I taught over at Capitol and so forth. Yeah, and you know who was ever grateful to that friendship and comradeship and so forth in the United States Navy Air Corps? George H.W. Bush, yeah, because he's like, you saved me. He literally did. So way to go, Nat Adams. Joe was killed. 1944, KIA. Joe Kennedy, upon who they thought was going to be the aspirations and success and so forth of the Kennedy family, was killed. 1944. I want to say it was in the European theater of operations in World War II. Yeah. So Joe was killed. So that brings 1944. Yeah. So then the next oldest son is John. And so John kind of moves into that position of, hey, we got you pegged for success. Yes? He was killed in an accident. I think he was shot down. Yeah. Yes, war sucks, especially when you get killed in it. Okay. All right. John F. Kennedy actually, he served in the Navy. He was on PT 109 in the Pacific. John F. Kennedy, okay, second son, he ended up conducting, he'd been a Harvard graduate and so forth, and so, they're definitely going to be in Harvard. And he ended up helping to save a shipmate after a Japanese destroyer rammed their PT boat. And so John is a hero for that, and that's written in a book that he wrote, or was written for him, called Profiles in Courage. And so he is a Navy war hero, veteran, goes into politics. Although, make a little note of this and then we'll wrap up. He did suffer from very serious back pain conditions throughout his life. I think especially after that. I might be wrong about that. But if you got serious back, anybody knows people like this serious pain things? Like, what do you do for that? He was heavy into medication in order to like alleviate the pain. So sometimes the medication is really, 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 really strong. So anyway, we'll pick up on that. Is that the last Kennedy that's going to be important? There's Bobby, Robert F. Kennedy, and right over here is Ted Kennedy. When he was an older senator from the state of Massachusetts, I was a page. I delivered things for him and other people. Yeah, it is. You knew who was a young senator back in those days? From Delaware? Joe Biden. Did I ever get an photograph from him, signed Joe Biden? Daniel's like, yeah, I did. Yeah, I'll have to share that.